audio.
Good morning.
Okay, there we go. Oh, wait, no.
Now it is.
Now there's
Okay. We need to call the meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, everyone's saying no. Approval of minutes. Does anyone have any corrections for last meeting minutes? Okay, if no, it's automatically approved. Public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wants to address the finance committee? Okay, I didn't hear from anybody, so I guess go past that. Then we're down to the financial statement, the monthly report. That would be Dave.
Thanks, Gene.
Recoup.
Recupero, yep, like recuperate.
Do we have enough money to change your name to something like Smith or something like that would be easy?
Yeah, Parks would be a lot better, wouldn't
Oh, that's good.
it? Okay, so I'm going to move into shared screen here and we'll start talking about the month of January. And I'm going to look for the file.
Catherine, do you have a bee buzzing around your head or something?
Why does it look like it?
You were just kind of bouncing around there. I thought, what is going on over there?
Well, my dogs got out, so I keep
Okay.
going there to look. And now I had to get my computer up. And yes, it means I probably have a bee in my bonnet.
Okay, do you guys see my screen yet?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. We're gonna start on the statistics, which in the packet is page 7. And we're gonna talk about the month of January. So we're already a little bit more than halfway through the fiscal year, 7 months. And so what happened the month of January? Excuse me, I gotta turn off my phone here. So the first item that I want to talk about is acute discharges and acute days, lines 1 and line 8. And typically January is one of the busier months for acute care because it's in the middle of the winter and people get viruses and flus and all kinds of bad things. And we can see a year ago, we had 159 days and 43 discharges. This year, however, it was quite a bit slower. It was only 25 discharges and 110 days. So for whatever reason, there wasn't as much sickness in the community, which is a good thing in many ways, except for when we look at from a hospital financial picture. That's where one of the areas where we make our money. So that ends up causing this year-to-date number on line 8 of 919 to be much closer to where we were year-to-date last year. We had a fairly significant positive variance, especially over the first few months, the summer. But now we're kind of back to looking at this year being really close to last year in terms of inpatient volumes, looking at the year-to-date number through 7 months this year compared to the similar 7 months last year, almost identical. So things have slowed down since the summer. On the positive side, we can see another statistic that's staying busy. I'm going to hit plus a couple times to make these numbers a little bit bigger. The line item for emergency room 32, we're going to go and we're going to look at emergency room visits of 613 for the month and move over here, and we can see last January it was 447. So we still are seeing pretty consistently every month on the ER busier this year than it was a year ago. And especially when you slide over to the year-to-date picture, for the ER 4273, last year was 3544. That represents about a 20% jump this year in ER. That's pretty significant. People are using our ER a lot more this year than they did a year ago. We still see the same problems we had in long-term care. That census 46. Last year it was 49. Last year we were averaging year to date 47, 49. So we're still down in large part due to the problems of people getting qualified to become admitted because of the COVID issues. I don't know, Mark, you wanted to speak to any of that, how things are
I
going.
just wanted to point out just the swing bed. Is that line item number 9?
Yeah, that's a good point. So we are starting to see more utilization in swing bed. Like, let's go up to 9. And you can see we had 106 for the month, and that compares favorably to budget and prior year. So we are starting to use swing bed a lot more, and that's a very profitable area. Now, we were way behind last year, and now we're starting to catch up.
Right.
Looking at the year-to-date numbers, what's going on with swing bed? Why are we doing more of that, Mark?
I think, we're getting a lot of patients who are swung over during their stay because the length of stay ends up increasing for whatever reason, unsafe discharges and things like that. So we end up swinging them.
So they're not ready to be sent home, and they're not really acute, but we still qualify for swing bed.
Right. And the other side of that is the fact that a lot of the bed space in skilled nursing was we couldn't admit to there because of some of the downtime that we had with positive COVID cases, like you said before. So they would end up staying in med surge a little longer for longer days anyway.
I see. Okay, well, that helps explain it.
Mark, while we're talking about that, are we getting any of the patients from that place that went out of business in Bakersfield?
I don't think so. We were not able to take them at the time that place closed because we were in a yellow red zone situation. So I think they found places for them elsewhere. We have taken since a few of our own off of med surge and taken them over there. We just admitted some from yesterday, and we continue to do that as we increase our staffing numbers as well.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other comments or questions on this page, I'm going to move up a couple pages.
I have a quick question. Are the
Sure.
swing beds also getting physical therapy or respiratory therapy?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
And
perfect.
they're getting activities as well.
Yeah, I know that's the regulation too. I just didn't know if they were just there because.
No, Diane and one of the new physical therapists come over pretty much every day and do their therapies with them.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we should see some other benefits as we use swing beds more in some of the other ancillary departments like therapy. So that's a good point. Okay, I'm going to move up a couple pages. Page 9 in your packet, page 4. And one of the obvious first things that jumped out at me this month was a number over 2 now of financial strength index. What's happening technically is this, one of the key variables on the formula is looking at the last 13 months profitability. We had some bad months early in the fiscal year. And my phone keeps going off. I'm not shutting it off right. So if you remember last year, the bottom line wasn't looking very good through at least the first 3 quarters of the year. Well, some of those months are dropping off now, and we're showing better months. And so the 13-month average is getting a little better. So we're seeing a really good, strong financial index without losing anything in terms of our cash position or other important variables like long-term debt and those kind of things are all showing us in a good status as it relates to financial strength. The next thing I wanted to refer you to was this second graph. Yes.
That previous screen you sort of went over, the clinic is down quite a bit.
This one?
Where it shows the clinic's visits are down.
Oh yeah, clinic. We didn't talk about clinic. Let's go
Yeah.
back there. Yeah, the clinic numbers are actually higher than last year in the primary care. Actually looking pretty good. What were you looking at?
Okay.
A little bit down from last year if you look at year to date. So yeah, they're about like last year.
Okay, I'm not sure where I was looking at that. way.
Okay, yeah, 37 and
Okay.
38 look pretty close to what we had last year.
Okay.
Okay, so back to my next comment was on this net income graph. And if you look closely, this number is higher than it was last month, and I increased it. So in fact, it looks like my projection for how we're going to finish this year is going to be better than the last 4 years. And why is that? Well, it's not because of anything recent that's happened, the profit loss for the monthly, but it's about my discussion with Rick Jackson and how he dealt with our audit. And he was okay with leaving some of Chet's conservatism in the audit. However, he said he's probably going to have to start moving some of those dollars out of payables and showing it to the bottom line. And I suggested that it would be better that if I do that as the CFO instead of having those adjustments made during the audit. So I'm starting to move some of the conservatism that Chet had in prior years that was overstating the settlements of cash that we received that we didn't think we would be able to keep. And now we're going to be showing, at least this year, bringing some of that into the bottom line, just from a technical basis, showing profit, higher profit as a result of especially that 4 million COVID that we left most of that on the books that in the audit, but we're going to start bringing that in a little bit every month as we get more and more confident that truly we won't have to pay any of it back. So even though this looks like a great number and we can feel good about it, it's really more about prior year activity than it is about what's going on right now. The other things we can see on these graphs, you can see how we finished in ER last year and how our projection for this year is significantly better. So our ER is definitely coming back to what it was a couple years ago. We can see the acute side now, all of a sudden, it looks like a little bit of a drop compared to last year. For up till recently, we thought we were going to be higher in fiscal 22 compared to 21 on the acute. Now it's looking kind of flat or a little bit down. Skilled nursing, we can see that's definitely lower, the 18,086 compared to the projected of 17,654. So it's a mixed bag. I'd say we're about middle of the road when it comes to volumes. Not necessarily, nothing to write home about, nothing to be overly concerned. We have specific reasons why certain product lines aren't performing on the volumes that some of it is out of our control. But I think going forward in the future, I think our strategic plan needs to be thought through in terms of having a lot of new ideas on how we can grow our volumes. We need to get the surgery department back going and get the physicians recruited. I know I just met with the pharmacy manager today on his budget. He's got some good ideas how we can grow retail pharmacy, but growth is always going to be an important part of how we can be successful going forward. The positive takeaways for January, We did have an operating surplus that you'll see in a little bit. We'll look at the P&L, 100,000. We continue to perform better than budget year to date by quite a bit. Excuse me. Our overall cash position is declining this year. Now, we expected some of that because we knew the IGT payments were going to be a lot less this year compared to prior years. And that's also expected to be a 1-year dip, a temporary dip that should be recovering next year. But we are going to finish the year this year with less cash in the bank than we had a year ago. And that's just part of what we knew ahead of time because of it wasn't reasonable to expect the continued great years we just completed the last 3 years in terms of a lot of supplemental money that just hasn't been as good this year. I have made some progress with Debbie in the business office, even though the days are higher this month. I really like how she's going after the issues with the direction from Barbara, that they have a good plan in place, and I'm feeling pretty good that we should start seeing the numbers improve on the accounts receivable. And by the way, there's a typo there. The AR increased, not improved. So that's it's improved means it was better, but we don't want, that's a number that should go lower. So any comments before I get to the next page? Let's go into the balance sheet. Line item number 1 and 2, kind of, because AR went up, we lost cash. We didn't bring in as much money from our accounts receivables. So the 1.5 million increase in receivables result in 1.5 million less than cash. So I'm not saying that's exactly the correlation, but you can see it's kind of a coincidental thing there, that one of the reasons why cash is lower is we had a low amount of collections in the month of January. Medicare was way down in what they normally pay us. Sometimes I wonder some of the limitations we have in our business office. Everybody's facing it when the federal and state governments don't seem to be quite as efficient in processing payments. Medicare and Medicare, they use COVID as a reason. They have a lot of people out too that do the normal adjudication of payments. So I think a lot of organizations in the last month or two have had a lot of shortages in terms of labor being out because of testing positive. And I'm guessing that's what happened in the federal government, might have contributed to why we got less money from Medicare last month. The next thing I want to talk about is some new formatting we're doing, and we can keep playing with this and change the descriptions. I asked Barbara to separate out the amount that really shouldn't be considered cash into a separate category. Right now we're calling it trustee funds. What it really is it's money set aside for the next debt payment on our long-term debt. And what we do is we gradually increase that about 100,000 every month. This was just 1 month payment that adds up, and then we make a payment at the end of a 6-month period for about $500,000-$600,000 that goes to the U.S. Bank for our most recent borrowing. So that's really shouldn't be considered, money that we can use. So I wanted to make sure that that was kept separate. The other item that we separated out that it was the CapEx program for Tim's retirement. We can show that as an asset down here below the line in the other asset category. So we're trying to classify things more in the correct area using acceptable accounting principles. Any questions? Move on to the next item. I want to talk about more reclasses that, based on the audit, we have Rick Jackson took out the big number that we used to call due to third-party payers and the current liabilities. This 11 million is now zeroed out because we put it the way Rick classified it down below in line item 20, and he called it long-term settlements. So you can see how this number is up similar to the amount that we lost in line 10. So it's a reclassification down to a long-term liability. It does have one ratio that sometimes some bankers look at that helps, it makes us look better. It's called the current ratio, and it compares the current assets to the current liabilities. And because current liabilities is going down, our current ratio improves. It makes us a little more credit worthy when they look at ratios. So that was pretty much what I wanted to talk about on the balance sheet. Moving over to the P&L for the month of January. We're real close to budget overall. You can see this number is less than 1% on the gross charges, line item 6. When I look closer at our picture, when it comes to gross revenues, I'm going to jump forward a page and then I apologize, I'm going to go back. So I'm going to go to the next page of the same line item on year to date, because I want to talk a little bit more about gross revenues on, excuse me, this line 6 on gross revenues. So I asked myself the question, so are we really busier this year or not compared to last year? Well, one way we can look at it on an overall global basis is knowing that Chet put in a 7% rate increase. What's our year-to-date number compared to last year-to-date number? And this calculation only about 5.4%. So we're really maybe even slightly less busy this year looking at it for the first 7 months, because most of this increase was the rate increase. And in fact, if we didn't have the rate increase, we may be showing it a little bit less in total gross revenue because it's a little bit less than 7% compared to prior year. So we can no longer talk about how busy we are, which started out this summer. In fact, the last several months have now kind of leveled itself off, and we're kind of similar to what we were last year. And again, what's working in our favor is this section 7, lines item 7 through 10. And what we're doing here is we're bringing these numbers down. We're having less deductions because prior years, these numbers were overstated based on Chet's conservatism. And now there's a couple million of it now has been reduced to accurately show what truly is the correct total deductions, even adjusted for prior years. So that the majority of this favorable variance has to do with correcting prior year payables to bring them in line to what we really are, our true payables, and to make the financial statements more accurate. But I don't want the board being overly giddy because we're doing so much better over budget, thinking that we're in great shape financially in terms of our operations. It's mostly what we're showing is prior year benefit of what hadn't been put to the bottom line yet. So the next, I'm going to go back to what happened in January, just the month of January. And one positive thing that the first time we saw a number get in line with budget is line item 19. You can see supply expense was $515 below budget for supplies. So, and supplies all year has been way higher than budget. So it was good to see that line item now come back in line. In general, when I'm doing my strategic plan for the next 5 to 7 years, one of the things I'm starting to be concerned about is whether we can, as an organization, adjust appropriately. What happened in fiscal 21 in the audit is we showed an 11% increase in operating expenses. It looked okay because we got all this COVID money. Now, my question is when COVID money stops, are we going to be able to get back down to the same level of expense that we had prior to COVID? When all these stimulus checks stop coming in. So we have to be careful going forward to be prepared that once we know the feds in the state is no longer going to pay us extra to deal with these higher expenses, then it's going to be incumbent upon us to get us back to our expense structure, pre-COVID expense structure. Out of the 3 million increase from fiscal 21 to fiscal 20, I'd say at least $1 million of that has to come back off the totals on expenses because we're assuming a big part of that 3 million was COVID related. So if on the revenue side we stop getting COVID revenue, we obviously have to stop we have to figure out a way to get our expenses back down.
So Dave, I just have a question about that. I have to hire contract labor. I know that the contract labor has literally tripled in the last year.
That's a good example.
There's a absolute, it's so maddening to me, the amount of money that we have to pay for contract labor. And I know that it's gouging because I'm sure that the RNs and the LVNs and the CNAs are not making what we're paying for them.
Yeah, and I think what you just said illustrates kind of an underlying point that I'm about to make, is asking the next question: how much of this is under our control?
Yeah.
But the problem is if we don't cut the expenses, it'll show. We'll start spending a lot more money than we're bringing in, and we're going to start going through our money a lot faster.
Well, they required us to have they required us to hire a new infection control practitioner for the skilled nursing facility. And that's an expense that's not going to go away.
And that's a good example. And so unfunded mandates is, I want the board to understand, we're going to do everything we can do to maximize profits, but there's a lot of things that are just not under our control, that the normal state of affairs is if we do nothing, we're going to start deteriorating. So we have to be creative. We have to find different ways to put money on the bottom line, because the normal approach is we're going to get paid less and less, and our expenses are going to get more and more.
Fair enough.
So that's the only point I want. I want the board to have a soberness about the challenges that we face financially in running a hospital. I'm not exaggerating at all. It's the government really has a propensity to do what we call unfunded mandates, and that's what Mark is talking about. And it's just a part of life, and we just need to know that as the decision-making body of the organization, that we're going to do the best we can to minimize the damage, but we're clearly swimming upstream when it comes to a lot of these tendencies. Now, the good news is they've been generous up till now with all this COVID stimulus money, and we've been able to keep it. So that's the good news. I don't have the confidence that it's going to continue. I'm sitting down with each manager, and we're going through the budgeted line items, and rightfully so, we're trying to predict the future, and we don't see a lot of these expenses going away, with the pharmaceutical costs still staying high next year. Well, I'd almost have to assume then that the federal government's going to keep paying us extra in stimulus money, because if that dries up, it's going to be a different picture for us. So I don't know, I'm really struggling right now. The budget that I end up showing you guys in May or June, whether or not we can predict whether we're going to get any stimulus money next year or not. And, and normally CFOs don't like to predict things that don't have any assurance of getting, because if it doesn't come in, then we've budgeted way too much in expenses that we can't afford. And so I'm really struggling this year seeing the dynamic of how we've got a lot of these expenses that are outside our control. But however, we don't have any guarantees that the government's going to pay for it. I'm just kind of venting to you guys so that you can see how I'm thinking about it. As we go forward, we have these challenges that we have to take seriously. Okay, moving on.
Dave, I have a problem figuring on the designated funds, but when the money first started coming in, we designated almost everything extra toward the building funds.
Yes.
And has that been corrected to where?
And I think I admire the board and Tim to do that, because we clearly need a better hospital, and it's a good thing to set aside money for things that are going to hold its value, like a new building. The problem is, what I'm trying to say is, what if we need some of that excess just to cover operations? You know, and it's just a big if. I don't know if we're going to continue to get paid appropriately for the unfunded mandates.
Well,
So we may have to put some of that money aside just to handle operational shortfalls each year if we can't positively cash flow. Because I don't have a real positive picture right now as I go through the detail, that I can see that the years going forward, that if normal operations, that we're going to normally bring in more than we spend. I'm not seeing a clear picture because of the way it seems to be that the inflationary expenses always end up being more than what the government changes in the third-party payer rates for Medicare, and insurance companies pay us 1 or 2%, but our cost of contract labor and our cost of supplies go up 5-6%. And you keep carrying that out several years, and all of a sudden you end up with a pretty big cash flow deficit that you're bringing in less than what you're spending. So that's I'm just trying to use those as examples of what we have to do on the financial end to make everything work. Is we have to be creative. We have to find areas of growth. We have to eliminate waste of things we're currently spending money on that we don't need to spend money on anymore. So those kind of things have to be part of the strategic plan.
One of the things in 18, prior to COVID, we weren't even able to pay it. We were self-insured for the employees' benefits. We weren't able to pay the bills, or to pay, since we were self-insured, we had to pay the claims. We weren't able to pay the claims.
Yep.
Employees were in collection. And so prior to COVID, we weren't operating profitably. So
and my job is to make sure every year we positively cash flow in our normal operations, forget about all this extra stuff. Can we normally bring in more money than we're paying out as far as our normal operations? And I don't think we're quite there yet.
okay, well, you're thinking you're doing a good job. As far as Chet's conservatism, we had to hire him in about 2000 roughly. I'm not quite sure exactly when it was, because we weren't handling our finances properly, and he was part of the conditions that we got bailed out, that we get him, and so he was conservative, and
so I don't want us to lose that. That's why I'm kind of negative today, because I'm showing you better numbers. Hey, we're $1.5 million over budget. You know, we should be able to do all kinds of new things. Well, not necessarily.
So Dave, can't we just raise our prices in commensurate with the government's raising?
Yeah, that's exactly our dilemma, is raising the price. As you know, we're very little of what we get paid is charge based.
That's right.
And that's the problem.
Capitated, yeah.
yeah. And I get sick whenever I look. I was in the emergency care room, and the bill was like, one part of it was $1,100. They paid $100 of it, Medicare.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, our costs are more than that.
Yeah, and out of 14,000 for the total picture, we end up getting $700 or $800. It is the craziest thing in the world. I don't see how Medicare can do it. And we got so many people that are on Medicare or Medi-Cal. But anyway,
Now, one bucket of money that hopefully isn't going to dry up, that's really been a savior to acute care hospitals in the state, has been IGTs.
yeah,
And hopefully that'll stay strong, and maybe all of my whining and complaining goes away because the IGTs covers the difference. But I don't know that for a fact. You know, we've got it in our long-term model, that IGTs are going to be pretty strong. And as long as that stays the case, I think we probably will be in good shape. But we better have a backup plan if IGTs aren't as high as we're hoping. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea how I'm thinking as we move forward, when we come up with board retreats and we talk about what things we can afford to do and what things we have to be careful in terms of
now
type of growth we go through.
where is the money restricted for construction? What line was that? Is there a certain line it's on?
And Chet put them in a couple different lines. And the way I'm analyzing it, it's all in this middle section on the assets labeled limited, assets used to limited. Any of these line items 13 to 19, I think can be used for construction, except for this middle line is 88,000. So we've got, I mean, we can add it all up and it's over 20 million bucks. And that's a good thing. And it could lead us to a false sense of security that we're in good shape. But if the project costs 20 million, then we have zero, you know, and what if we negatively cash flow a couple years? Then we have less than zero.
Well,
So
why can't we explain that better to where the average person can see what you're talking about?
and I've got some models that show you that. And I'm just waiting for Tim to give me the okay. I'm sending him drafts. And as soon as him and I are on the same page, is the appropriate time for me to share it with the board. But you're right. I need to show you in a way that makes sense to you.
Okay, cool. Because I'm just like everybody else. Well, most everybody else. I'm sort of simple.
I've got a couple different plans. Even if the cost of inflation goes way high on construction, like we're worried about, you know, thankfully we still have debt. We have access to capital that we can go into the debt funds, and we could probably at least 5 to 10 million more and into another bond issue and still get our project done. So the good news is, you know, there's a lot of different ways we can skin the cat in terms of getting us to the place where we need to be, have our new hospital built, and still be in a good financial position to have enough reserves that we can run our operations. So I've got a couple models, scenarios A, B, and C that all point to a successful outcome where we, even if we go over budget on the project, we still can make it work.
The one way of getting funds would be a bond issue where the voters approve it, but that's with us paying it back. And
yeah, with us paying back, obviously has some negative implications going forward. Even after the new hospital's built, we'll have about $500,000 to $1 million more in debt service every year that's already committed, that we won't be able to spend on anything in the future because we're already borrowed money for the hospital. But that's typical. What every organization does on these big ticket items is usually has to be financed.
One of the things, you're in finance, and I was talking to Ross earlier. I don't see Ross is on there. All the schools and hospitals and that, I see the parking lots with solar on top of the structures they build. And apparently there's funds available to pay for that. That might not cost us money, but in the long run would save us a lot of money on utilities. Do you know anything at all about that?
No, I don't. That you got me curious though. I need to I could do some research and find out how that's working and whether or not the CFOs are happy with the return.
Well, the school, all the schools and most of the hospitals have it, and there's got to be it's got to be a good deal, or, you know, so we should check a little bit.
Well, the only thing I'd put a caveat on is, okay, we've got a utility line item here, line 20. So out of the 18 million, 420 is utilities. It's kind of a spit in the bucket.
Well, there's a whole lot of spit in the bucket that we could unspit.
Yeah, it's all this up here, all the salaries and wages. Mark's got way too many people. That's the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
And, you know, we got
That's
a
just one
hospital.
person, Dave.
But also, we're at a point that if we need to stop on this major project at any time, we can stop and then restart
Yeah,
also,
That's
correct?
true. That's another backup plan is
I
if we
mean-
realize that we just don't have enough for right now, we need to wait. We can obviously treat that as an additional scenario of making sure that we keep our organization financially sound just by postponing the completion of the project a few years.
Well, and maybe with the mask mandate being lifted for community and stuff, maybe people will get sick again and come to the ER. I mean, I don't know. That's one or two ways to look at it. Man, the hospital and our clinics teach so much wellness programs to
Mhm.
keep people well, but then it affects us in the long run if they follow that, don't get sick and come back to us for treatment. So it's kind of a catch 22, I think. But I thank you for explaining all the financial stuff that you do explain, and the changes that you make as we go along, I think has really been beneficial also.
And I wish I had more definitive answers for you. You can tell I got more questions than I have answers right now.
Well, and you know what, when the financial guy comes back like that, I get a little nervous, honestly, but I'm gonna let you have this one. Okay. Next month.
Eventually you expect me to have answers instead of just
Right,
complaining about the
right.
problem.
And I want them all positive.
You know, and it's one way of just kind of looking at life. Do we look at it with the glass full or half empty?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you are looking at it both ways and have backup plans. And again, that's why I brought up the fact that if we need to, we can, you know, put a hold on what we're doing and still be solvent, because that's kind of important. So
Absolutely. That's the thing that we can never ignore is we need to have a hospital here for the long term, and we can't let it deteriorate like it almost did a few years ago.
right.
In terms of the ability to operate from operations. One other minor point here, Barbara put in the amount for interest expense, which was instead of a normal 1/12, we took a 6-month number, and there won't need to be any more postings of interest expense for the year, or it'll be very little. And so it's all in the non-operating. So that's why we showed a big non-operating variance there, because this is our first year on the financing, and she wanted to make sure she had an accurate number of what. So she didn't do the normal accruals like she does in other years. But I just want to explain to you, this is just a one-time adjustment why non-operating is so far off. And that's why our bottom line for the month, actually the month is the one that I wanted to show you. This is a 6-month number, the 168,000. So the difference there, which was 142,000, is similar to the loss from operations, and it's only because we put it all in 1 month instead of spreading it over 6 months. So really our bottom line for the month is close to this 100,000. If you take that 142, add it back to the 43, then you get right back to the 100,000 gain from operations. So it was still a positive month, but again, most of it has to do with prior year. So, but it's still a legitimate positive bottom line that we can feel good about. It does put us in good positions. If we had to borrow more money, our ratios look better and better to the bankers because they can see that we are showing an operating surplus, and it helps us qualify for more borrowing if we ever wanted to go that route.
Dave, can I ask, I don't know if this is the right place or just your opinion, inflation. Last year it was 7.5. We gave our employees up to 4%, and probably the average might have been 2 that they received, which leaves them falling behind about 5%. It's sort of not fair. We should consider doing a cost adjustment. Or I'm asking your opinion. What do you do?
I usually talk to the head of HR first, and they're the experts. It's always a double-edged sword because we have to recruit qualified people to put in the key positions in the organization. If we start losing those people, then we got a problem.
Well, it
So
doesn't take an expert to figure out the difference between 7.5 and 2.5. I mean,
but then it gets
5%
back
loss.
to up here. Are we going to get paid 5 or 7% more on each patient because we're going to give a 5 or 7% raise to our people? Is it another one of these unfunded mandates that, okay, yeah, we better pay our people appropriately, but is the third party payers going to pay us what we need in terms of the percentage increase based on inflation?
Well, if we don't have the employees to do the job, we won't have to worry about the third party.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I usually take the lead from our HR person. We have a new one, Sarah Ramos, and so I'm going to be meeting with her on a regular basis when we go through the budget to make sure that we have everything in place to continue to be able to recruit and retain good employees. I know Mark has some opinions on all that as well, but it's the whole team that has to kind of chime in on that. Obviously, the CFO wants to pay the people the least possible because we'll have a better bottom line, but that's not always reasonable if you start losing good people.
I haven't heard any chiming from them.
Well, I could chime in now, Gene, if you like.
Would you please? I mean,
Absolutely. I don't think there's any employee here that got 2.5%. Everybody got more than 3.5% increase last year. And some of them got up to 9% increases because of the minimum wage increase. The CNAs and the LVNs all received a tremendous increase. So the CNAs, I think they got 15% increase last year because we had to make it more attractive to try to garner some people from outside of the community to come up and work for us here. Some of that did work temporarily until COVID kind of put the kibosh on everybody. Nobody wants to work anymore, it seems like. But a lot of people chose to go with the fast, high money and go work for registries where they're making these killer numbers. That's what I was just talking about a little while ago, is the gouging that's happening to these hospitals. There's not many hospitals that can afford to pay a nursing salary around $130 an hour, which is
that's
crazy
why we want
money.
to keep the ones we got, Mark.
I agree 100% to retain them. Yes, I agree 100%. And we have a way of managing the performance evaluation money with the parity increases that matches around 4.5%. So based on those numbers, you're right, 4.5% doesn't equate to 7.5%, but it's better than 2.5%.
We just need to keep looking at it.
Absolutely, yes, I agree.
And one of the typical ways hospitals deal with it is exactly how Mark described it. We call those market adjustments in particular areas. Certain types of jobs sometimes need to be looked at more than others in terms of shortages, in terms of the ability to retain people. There might be just RNs or just LVNs or just pharmacists, or and we call those targeted market adjustments because it's not usually feasible that we can do what we do for one group, we can do it for all of them. We just can't afford it. And I think the percentages that Mark's thrown out, we don't have to apologize for the 4 to 7% adjustments that everyone got. Some of them got more than that based on their position. So I think the recent history here is we have paid our people. We've been generous with pay increases, at least recently. It sounds like to me, for what Mark just described, is I don't think we have anything to apologize for.
But I think you're right, Gene. Continuing to look at it for a retention from that perspective, absolutely, we continuously look at it.
Well, thanks, Mark.
And I do think that our benefit package is fairly attractive as well. That's 25% of the wage that we make. So the PTO time that we accrue and all that stuff, it's a good package. So
We want to stay there though, and keep anybody from leaving, so.
yeah, I have a ball and chain for that.
Another way of looking at kind of the cause and effect is, okay, if you ask a given employee the question, what's more important to you, your security that there's no chance at all that the hospital's going to get in financial trouble and there'll be layoffs, or an extra 3% of your pay next year? And most people would say security is more important to me, that I know I got a job.
Here we are spending $20 million on
Because
something.
as soon as we run into major cash flow issues, then we're going to have to do layoffs, and nobody wants to lose their security.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's one of those trade-offs. We have to be real careful how to do it.
Yeah, we could just slow down the construction a little bit and stay in line.
That's always an option. That's a type of board type of policy that you guys have to grapple with
Until 2030, when they close the hospital anyway, and we all lose our jobs.
That's true. The 2030 deadline is still out there. I've heard. Go ahead.
Earthquake could be solved for $1 million. The rest of it is what's cost the money. So, but at any rate, that's a different story.
So those are all good issues. I wanted to keep it philosophical today, even though I don't have good answers, so that we can keep thinking along the same lines. And when we sit down and we start coming up with solutions, we'll understand what the constraints are.
So I have a quick question. I know that HR is still in the other building and we pay rent there. What kind of benefit is that going to bring us if we move them into our new building? Is it ready for them to go? And then we're not spending the $750 a month rent plus utilities over there? I mean, we could be looking at what, $1,000 at least?
I know that Troy is working on that building every day. He's down there and they're getting things done. Bob would be a better one to speak to about that, but I see Troy down there every day.
Yeah,
a good example of eliminating waste that doesn't need to be there if we can find it, if we've already got a solution.
Exactly right.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not much longer. I mean, if you just get at least the space for them to go in and get their phones and everything done. I just think that would be, it may, like you guys said earlier, a spit in the bucket, but every spit adds up, I guess. So
that's true. That is true.
It would just make a difference.
Yep, absolutely. And, those are good ideas that we need to keep on the forefront, and make sure we're making progress and getting us to the position where HR, we don't have to keep paying rent for HR space.
Yeah. Well, because I know Tim had said before on that one end, I mean, those offices are already there. it's just, doing a little whatever their paint was or making the phones and the internet and stuff available to them there. So just think it's something maybe we could, and when Tim gets back, but
Yep.
get it prioritized to get that money back into, as an asset, not, an expense.
Good point. So that's my presentation. I know we have a little bit more on the agenda, so I want to wrap it up and just tell you if there's not any more questions. That's my January report.
Thank you.
Dave, I'd like to tell you one more time, I know you get sick of hearing this. You are awesome.
Oh, I never get sick of hearing that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I guess Barbara. is
Yes.
next, I think. And are we gonna get off the screen for Barbara?
Oh, I am so sorry. I'm daydreaming. Thank you. There you go.
But I don't have an on-screen presentation. It's in your packet.
Yeah.
The local vendor aging, our total right now, well, when I ran this on 2/16 was 13,543, and that's all for February.
Okay.
Do you have any
I got on the contract renewals, I've got a question. Are we down to there now?
Yes,
Okay. GeoLink. $7,700 a month?
yes.
What was, it started out at 37 or something like that?
Well, it went up when we added the phones because they're all related.
Have we looked into using local for some of the stuff that wouldn't hurt to break down a little bit? That's a lot of money. $8,000.
It's more of a Carrie question, but I don't think that the local service gives us the reliability that the GeoLink says.
Can we get
That's the
Carrie to
local.
give us a report on that at the next meeting and pull it off from approving it today?
And ask him.
Sounds good. So Heidi's, I'm
Local
assuming
services.
Heidi's taking minutes. Do we have Heidi here today?
Heidi
no,
is not.
She's off.
So
This
who's
is
taking
recording.
minutes?
This is recording.
Oh, so she's gonna take minutes off of the recording.
Yeah.
So she'll hear this and she'll make sure Carrie gets notified that.
Well, I'll make sure Carrie gets notified.
Did you have any other questions on any other contracts that are on the list?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't either.
Okay.
The Tesla, well, that's a whole different story. So, no. There's no money anyway in Tesla for that.
Correct. That's just, there is a service agreement having to do with those batteries. But there's no payment for it.
Yeah, there's no money involved, so there's
Right.
no difference. But, okay, is that, let's see. That's it. Barbara, thank you so much.
You're
Now,
welcome.
I guess we're down to capital expenditure for the copy machine. Is anyone here to talk about it? Mark? or-
I am here.
Okay,
What is your question?
I got no questions. I looked at it and we need it, so I just need a
It's
motion.
one of those things in the ER that gets used on a hourly basis. I mean, that thing is just, and so Carrie's decision is to replace these one at a time. And so mine is up on the chopping block now, and I did the CER for it, and that's what you see before you.
Mark, you were making a comment about the monitors that you're replacing in the emergency room.
Yeah, I have my capital budget documents right here.
No.
The monitors are $200,000.
You said it automatically brings up the patient's charts and everything.
Yeah.
The new one that you'll have in the emergency room, probably within 5 years, it not only brings it up, it's attached to it, and it actually thinks and makes recommendations on what the problem is. The new artificial intelligence is just awesome. Those are in place and in practice right now.
So the monitors that we're looking at, they actually, the documentation would go directly into the the patient's chart. It'll
Right.
be interfaced so that,
Right.
you know, vital signs and everything will go right into the chart.
But the newer equipment will also think and look at everything and give the doctor.
Well, then I can get rid of the nursing staff? Is that what you're saying?
It will assist them drastically. It's expensive. It's too expensive for us, but it's there now. Okay, I need a motion to approve that if no one has any more questions on the copy machine.
I'll make a motion that we approve it for the expenditure.
Okay, then I don't think I need, do I need?
Doesn't it just go to consent?
Yeah.
It will go to consent.
Okay, if no one objects, then we'll send it to consent. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, is
That's
there
true.
anything else, anyone?
You're in the ER.
I don't think so. I think we
5100.
covered all of it.
The monitor's $200,000.
Could all of us, there's not many of us here, could we all chip in and get a barber to cut his hair? I was talking about you. Thank you. I guess, Catherine, do you have anything?
I do not.
All right.
Just want to thank everybody for their time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks again for Dave.
Thank you. You
We're
guys have a
outta
good
here.
day.
Meeting's
Okay,
over.
you too.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Awesome.